Hello, everyone. This is Nikki, you also known as Faces Trader, and you're watching the March 18, 2021 Global Market Update. Sorry, local Philippine Market Update. So let's begin. Okay, in the Philippine format, actually, there's a lot of rising cases of COVID. So the background is that we still are yet to recover. However, what you could see in the markets is a slew of bargain hunters. You can see that the market is up 64 points tonight. Today, 1% up. Following the Fed speech, Jay Powell actually prolonged the bubble of the markets abroad. And so that's really flourishing in the Philippine markets, showing that, okay, the Fed will continue to print money. There's no such thing as inflation, etc., etc. And so for a day, the bulls get a party. Everyone who shorted got a cover last night and had to cover tonight as well. So this is what's happening in the index. You can see that the market value in the Philippine market is 5.8 billion pesos. It's very low value turnover, meaning nobody really looks at the Philippine market for a buying opportunity. You've got foreign net selling of about 400 million pesos, continuous selling, but you've got some gainers in the markets. Now, what stocks did the market actually buy? The biggest gainer is, of course, pure gold at about 5% up tonight. Here at about 36.2 pressure. Let's read the Philippine market. All right, your SM Prime is 36.3, your BPI is 85.95, your BDO is 106, Metro Bank is 47.6. You are seeing financials in the Philippines catch up with the lagging world, as the world's financials are actually pricing in a potential better recovery. Now, of course, this is still a debate in the Philippine markets because the US and the Philippines are two different animals. Is the Philippine financials really able to have a low NPL? For those who don't know what NPL is, it's net provision loss ratio. It has to do with the credit risks that the Philippine banks were giving to those who were in debt to them. So it's actually, to me, a question mark, and you've got some news today, and we're going to read the PNB and East West news later on. Now, BPI, BDO, MBT got the benefit of the doubt, rising 2%, 3% each. Your BPI is 86, your BDO is 106, your Metro Bank is 47.6. Aboitiz Equity Ventures today is 37.25, Ayala Land is 36, Security Bank is 125, Pure Gold is 36.2, AGI is 1068, Seas went to 6.5, Meralco's 273.6, GG Summit 60.85, Lucia Time Group's 1348, San Miguel Corporation's 120, GT Cap is 531, MPI is 393, Bloomberry 7, Robinson's Retail is 54, Globus 1940, Jollibee's 185.6, Megaworld's 350, FGen's 30.85, DMC's 5.2, Emperador's 10.24, Robinson's Land is 18, Ayala Corp is 7. Avoid this fires 24.55, ICD is 126.5, PLDT is 12.90, SM is 9.87. What you need to understand is that the Fed promised that the rates would be low forever. Low rates forever is making people see that, okay, if there is that threat of inflation, I'd rather put my money into stocks, no matter how bad the outlook is, how bad the economy is, how bad the situation worsens. The markets continue to believe in the Philippines or even the US equities because of the fact that interest rates will remain low for a very long time. And therefore, you've got these bargain hunters. Now, let's take a look at the stats. What you are seeing is that the money printing will never end. And so, top traded names today, after a rallying mood in a lot of your non-index names. Now, this is a little bit weird because, of course, Dito and Prim, we don't know why they rose. We don't know why they fall. So, I mean, at the end of the day, these are names that go up and down for whatever reason the market likes. The sentiment is just the sentiment. After rising from 1 peso to 4.2, Prim actually falls down to 23%, now 3.2. Your Ascent climbs a bit at about 698, but then again, you've got a lot of sellers on your Ascent, 7.5, 8.5. LR warrants got a big up today, 6% up to 18. Just really volatility. I mean, what do you call it? Dito, Prim, LRW, ABA, LAN. These are just volatile animals. Okay, so Ayala Land is 36, BSC is 78 cents. For all we know, BSC is just up and down, up and down. It's a volatile market for your non-index names. Your FI is up to 226. Your Nicolasia is back to 543. Converge is up to 1778. Robinson's Retail is 54. In fact, what we could only see in the Philippine market is that the Philippine market continues to trade in many companies in a volatile manner with really no direction. No direction. It goes up, goes down. It has no direction. There is no trend. Top gainers today is land with about 67 million pesos. You've got another top gainer, LR warrants. But there's nothing sustainable about these movements. It's up, then tomorrow it's up or down. It's like, that's what it is. Then what was strong last week, which is Prim, is now down 20%. Your BSC is down 3%. So it's really been what could you say about the Philippine market? Quite nothing, really. Trendless. Trendless and then downside more. Okay, so let's take a look at your news. All right, your East West Bank actually reported some news on their profits. So let's take a look at that. So 12 hours ago, East West says that their profit is rising to about 6.5 billion pesos last year. Their net income grew because of higher interest margins and trading gains. These banks translated a return on equity of 12%. Mr. Tony Moncupa said that despite the coronavirus pandemic and limited mobility, which resulted in fewer volume of new businesses and higher provisions for loan losses, the lower rates amid the consequent lower funding costs resulted in high net interest margins and higher trading gains. So they said that the lower rates were the reason why they were able to get some good results for the bank. The lender's revenue soared by 16% to 33.4 billion pesos from 2019. Net interest income reached 26 billion, up 23%, mainly because of lower funding cost. Without low rates, these banks would not report these great numbers. Its net interest margin stood at 8%. Total provisions for loan losses grew to 9.8 billion pesos, 2.4 times greater than last year's 4 billion, settling at 4% of total loans. So these NPLs will haunt you if these loans will never get paid. Okay, so non-interest income fell by 5% to 6.9 billion, mostly accounting by a decline in fees and other income. The bank incurred what it called a 2.7 billion pesos modification loss, or the value of assistance given to loan borrowers over the life of their loans arising from a mandated and bank-initiated cash flow relief program. The lower fees and cost of the debt relief programs were mitigated by the 4.2 billion peso increase in security trading gains. The pandemic resulted in the global monetary easing, pushing interest rates lower, creating opportunities for the trading income. So you think about it, out of that 6.5 billion pesos, East West managed to make 4 billion pesos across their trading gains. Trading gains. So operating expenses shrink 16 billion. Congrats to East West for doing a very good job on trading. That's where their income came from. Let's take a look as well on PNB. PNB Bank reports news. Okay. So another news reporting from the banks, Philippine National Bank. Okay, so 2 hours ago, let's read that. Okay, so let's read these news. Let's read the news about PNB's Veloso voted as the bank president of Bankers Association of the Philippines. So let's read the world news, the Philippine world news. It's loading. Oh, for those listeners out there, I just wanted to share to you that I am going to speak this March 20, 2021. It's a Zoom recorded webinar. I'm going to teach you guys how to actually navigate choppy markets in the worldwide. So strategies on how to make money in market crashes, choppy markets, and actually how to profit from market crashes, potential peaks in 2021. So just wanted you to know that Lady Trader's Confession is this March 20, 2021, this Saturday. There's a lot of speakers. I'm just one of the many speakers out there. You could register in Lady Trader's Confessions. Just go to their Facebook page. Just type it in. Wait lang while it's loading, bagal. All right. So anyway, so go to Lady Traders Confession 2021 for those listeners out there. It's about 2 days away. That's March 20, this Saturday. It's an event this Saturday at 9 a.m. You could purchase an online event. Everything that will be I think most everything is gonna be donated to the charities that are being given by these women. So it's ladies, but you can actually be a guy and watch. So it's a lot of stories, a lot of seminars. You can see a lot of speakers out there. So just check out the topics. Yeah, so I'll be discussing US global equities in the markets. I'll try to teach you how to profit from crashes, from peaks. Actually, you'll learn how to trade choppy markets. So yeah, so 2021 is going to be a choppy market, unlike 2020, which is really just buy crashes and then make money while sleeping. Okay, so let's read about BAP. Bankers Association of the Philippines, PNB's Veloso as the head. Philippine Bank, National Bank, PNB President Vic Veloso is elected as the President of Bankers Association of the Philippines. This is March 17. And I look forward to collaborating with the government, supporting their efforts, working with the government. During this annual general membership meeting, Land Bank President and CEO Cecilia Borromeo is the first Vice President. ING's country manager Hans Sikat is the second Vice President. Union Bank Chief Executive Edwin Bautista, Security Bank and President CEO Sanjay Vora will serve as the Bank Association Philippines Treasurer and Secretary respectively. The industry welcomed new members. You've got representatives from Bank of China, Bank of Commerce, BDO Unibank, China Banking Corporation, DBP, HSBC, ING, Mizuho, PNB Security Bank, Union Bank, Metropolitan Bank. Amidst the pandemic, they are saying that they have the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, the Financial Institution Strategic Transfer Act. 2020 is a year that we want to navigate uncharted territories. During these times, the banking industry has further demonstrated unparalleled support. Okay, so Mr. Cesar Consing, which is the PBI president, said they've given inputs on legislations and financial systems for the PDIC, for distressed enterprises, for economic recovery or GUIDE Act, and then the secrecy bills are still pending in Congress. Okay, so the cumulative net income of all the banks suffered 30% to 142 billion pesos in 2020 from 200 billion pesos booked in 2019 as they all beefed up their loan loss provisions amid the 2020 pandemic crisis. Okay, so PNB says that in 2020, they did sustain profitability amidst the pandemic. They closed the year with a net profit of about 17.6 billion pesos, an increase of 17%. The net interest income increased to about 35 billion pesos, also supported by lower funding costs, cushioning the drop in yield rates of earning assets. So all the banks, as you could see, are profitable because of these lower interest rates. Interest expense declined by almost half its year-ago level despite an 8% growth in deposits, about 890 billion pesos, as a bulk of these deposits continued to be in low-cost funds, combined with the direction and the reduction in high-cost deposits, partly due to the 7 billion pesos worth of long-term negotiable certificates of time deposits. Interest income on loans receivables decreased by 6%. Loan portfolio declined to 600 billion. PNB took advantage of market opportunities during most parts of this year, resulting in a threefold increase in their net securities, reaching 3.3 billion pesos, telling you that these banks made a lot of money from the crisis. In the distressed times, they actually bought a lot of stocks and they made some money in regards to that. The bank booked 17 billion pesos as well in provision for credit losses, more than 5 times the year-ago level, as a proactive approach to address potential delinquencies arising from the impact of the prolonged pandemic. During this economic fallout, the pandemic made it necessary to adopt a more prudent approach in asset deployment, recognize substantial credit provisioning. This will allow us to claw back our provisions in the future, and as the pandemic inevitably reshapes how businesses are conducted, we are focused exploring new opportunities, particularly in the digital space, translating to new revenue streams, as well as at the same time mitigating the risk arising from operating in the new normal. So it is quite normal why people are actually buying up some Philippine banks, because just as well as a lot of Americans are actually buying up your financials, no matter how dinosauric they are, because at the end of the day, they have those profits, they have those cash flows, and with a low interest rate environment out there, they are the ones poised to make a lot of money, as many households are suffering in the pandemic, needing loans, needing that net interest loans. PNB is also injecting 500 million pesos in an infrastructure-focused financing unit. They're beefing up the support for infrastructure building activities inside this country. The Mizuho leasing is now 83% from 75%. We are adding some capital to take advantage for construction industries in the government. This is a continuation of the Build, Build, Build program. We likely need to ease our quarantine rules so that the leasing business will become stronger in the future, especially supporting transportation and infrastructure. Formerly known as the PNB IBJL Leasing and Finance, under the auspices of the Provident Fund of PNB, is a vehicle for venture among PNB, Industrial Bank of Japan, which is now called Mizuho Corporate Bank. Now, if you are the head of these banks, what you are doing is, well, economic rebounds and asset quality is going to drive back the stocks. That's what analysts are saying. So let's read what other analysts are saying about the Philippine banks. Okay, they're saying that analysts believe that banks should perform better than everyone as an aid for the economic recovery. They note that there will be credit losses continuing to weigh down on their outlooks, but in general, the banks are expected to recover. Among the biggest rebounds, they believe that Security Bank will mark the biggest, Philippine Business Bank, Union Bank, Metro Bank, Philippine Bank of Communications, East West Bank, PNB, BPI, China Bank. So in general, the US and the locals are of the belief that the banks would be a safe haven for the profitability in 2021. In a broader sense, they still influence everything in the world. They are your financiers. The BSP cut rates unexpectedly by 25 basis points in the November policy meeting, which means that the cost of these net interest income assets is actually lower. Therefore, in amid the low interest rate environment, it's very beneficial for all of these banks to book higher interest income due to just a net interest margin expansion. With low rates forever, your banks are the ones poised to make a lot of money. They are your Wall Street fat cats making some money on a low interest rate environment. So that's what's happening in the Philippine bank scene. Let's take a look at the charts of your banks as a whole. Investograms gives you a lot of banking charts. So let's take a look at charts of the Philippine banks. And for those who are not in the know, the Philippine economy is about, PSEI is roughly 30% banks. BDO, BPI, Metro Bank, Security Bank, it's all banks in your top 10 in the Philippine markets. So they are a crucial infrastructure provider, financier of everyone. They're the Tyrion Lannisters of the Philippine market. If this was a Game of Thrones, the ones who have a lot of cash to lend to the people who don't have cash can get some interest income. So let's read about that. The Lannisters pay their debts. So let's see. Metro Bank. Let's take a look at the banks in the Philippine market. So the banks are awash with cash and they want to help the Philippine nation, whether it be through financing loans and so forth. And you could see that the net foreigners have been buying a lot of banks. It's clear that it is their safe haven. Banks seems to be the only ones that they're willing to park their money on. They've been buying and buying and buying banko. Banko lang ng banko. Forever and ever and ever. Banks, banks, banks all the way. Hi, Miss Nikki. Your thoughts on GT Capital and DMCI, please? Well, GT Cap will flourish because of their stakes in Metro Bank. However, as a bank, you perhaps would like to buy Metro Bank instead of GT Cap, but it's kind of the same thing. DMCI is construction-related businesses, and they are offset by that decline in SCC, Semirara. So you've got a less than positive outlook on DMCI. What do you think about MAC? Macro Asia is really about reopening. Flights will be canceled, so kawawa. But in the US, to be honest, like I've talked to a doctor in abroad. They're very happy with how the reopening in the economy in US is. Unfortunately, we are not the US. It might take us 2022 to recover. Unlike them, 2021, they can already travel. So if Macro Asia just happened to be a US, domestics, not about the Philippine domestic travel industry, if it was an international travel play, then it should be okay. However, I think that aviation and traveling in the Philippines is still a very hard recovery path. That's a problem. We are still having a surge in COVID cases. If you see that the surge in COVID cases in the Philippines is lower, then you could see macro Asia go up again. Flights yung problema dyan. If we don't have flights in the Philippines, hirap si macro Asia. So you just need to understand that aviation is really a critical thing when it comes to macro Asia and Cebu Pacific. Good afternoon. Speculative stocks have been green for the past few days. Do you think this is just a short-term bounce back? Is it likely to downturn in the next months? To be honest, speculative stocks have a mind of their own, so I don't know anything about them. What's a good entry to Bloom Casinos and SM Prime? Bloomberry is a casino. We noticed that there's a higher low at 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's hard to determine when the tourists will go back to the Philippines. So that's really the question mark in your casinos. If you're long-term, then you're long-term. If you're short-term, you've got to be as good as where the recovery in the Philippine vaccines would be. Hi, Miss Nikki. Any tips on when the right time and key levels to deploy funds? Thank you and more power. Okay, so you have to understand, despite how gulo-gulo the Philippine markets are, so right now you just look at the numbers, tells you that the banks are awash with cash and they're willing to be bought. So you could see that Metro Bank has a higher low here at about 44, and you've got a higher low here at about 46. They rose today at 48. You could see that in the short term, some cash is willing to buy Metro Bank. So higher low siya, malakas si Metro Bank. At the same time, there was a question, what do you think about GT Capital? GT Capital owns half of your Metro Bank, and so there will be a support on GT Cap. Here at about 507, there's a willing buyer, and I think that any drops on GT Cap will be supported simply because, well, if you like the bank, you like GT Cap. Now, BDO, what can you say about that? BDO is also a bank, one of the largest in the Philippine market, and this is a higher low. At 100 pesos, people are willing to buy. So it's very clear that 100 to 115 in the short term, if you're willing to make 5 to 10%, pwede na rin. BPI, what can you say about BPI? Well, the banks are the banks and they have the cash flows. Galing, no? From 78 to 86, BPI made about 9 to 10% in just 3 days. Although there will be some traps here on the 88, tells you how strong BPI is seen by the Philippine market. Now, with banks on the way up, does that mean that East West Bank will go up? Perhaps. After dropping from 12 all the way to about here at 950, you might see that some people will be willing to buy some East West Bank, even if it can go to 850. So I think that there are people who think that, hey, I want to buy this bank because I don't think that the banks can crater forever. Now, PNB, what do you think about that? After that great numbers, I think that some people see that, hey, there could be value here on PNB. And at current levels of 23.30, after dropping from 32, looks like this is giving us a buy signal. So in relationship to what's happening in the markets, Awesome10X calls a buy on financials. You've got a buying opportunity in the financials. So whether it be East West, whether it be PNB, looks like the market is willing to say yes to the banks. So the title for the day is, okay, say yes to the banks. That's it. Thank you very much. Hope to see you guys on March 20, 2021. Although I won't be discussing the Philippine markets, I'll be discussing about opportunities in the global markets. Do want to see you guys. If you have time, go to the Lady Traders Confession. There's a lot of people who's going to discuss. I'll just be one of those speakers. Hope to see you there. That's it. Thank you very much. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share Awesome10X to your friends. Bye-bye.